Happy anniversary, Salmon Squad! Week 8, which means we have been doing Salmon Science Friday now for 2 months. So thank you for tuning in every week with us. Shoot, shoot! Observation station, let's get ready for our tank observations. So our little fishies are swimming around like crazy. You might have seen them on the live stream. Most of their yolk sacs have now been absorbed. I'm only seeing maybe 1 or 2 that still have a little bit left. So we are now transitioned into that fry stage. So we are going to be getting ready to maybe start feeding them soon. I'm going to try to talk to the hatchery this week and see if we can get some food. So let's do observation. So what I'm going to be showing you today is we're going to look a little bit more at the habitat that the fish are living in inside the tank. So for your observation part of your activity, we are going to be looking at what habitat do our coho salmon prefer or like the best. So in the videos I'm going to show you, we're going to look at maybe the top of the tank versus the bottom of the tank. We're going to look at light and dark. We're maybe going to even get a peek. You can see in the live stream video that I'll show you, there are some nooks and crannies, little bits of habitat like rocks and tank equipment that maybe the fish will prefer to hide on. So what I want you to write in your observation section is where are the places that you're seeing the most salmon in our tank, because that's going to give us an idea of the habitat that they prefer, where they like living. In your drawings, since we've got mostly fry now, I want you to pay close attention and decide through your observations if you think that all of our coho salmon, do they all look the same? Because we were kind of comparing our fish to Brooks coho, and then last week we compared our fish to Margie's Chinook salmon. So this week I think it's going to be really cool for you to see if our fish have maybe different colors on their bodies, different shapes, different sizes. So in your drawing part, I want you to draw and label the way that our salmon compare to each other now. So let's do this. So we've been getting a ton of questions for Salmon Science Friday from students. So I'm going to be, for the next few weeks, definitely trying to catch up on answering all the questions that you've been asking. I've kind of put them into groups because we've had some students that are asking questions that are related to each other. So I'm hoping to answer everybody's questions sort of in chunks. So sort of the theme of today is we're going to be talking about the salmon body parts a little bit, and then a lot of questions have been coming in about what salmon eat. And so to start off with, we're going to cover the topic, and also you're getting close to doing something that's called a dissection, so I thought talking about body parts would be really cool. So the salmon anatomy or body parts. Elsie asked me, do fish have bones? Great question, Elsie. So fish actually do have bones. But Dakota actually sent me a flip grid and talked about fish that have cartilage. So I wanted to talk to you real quick about our salmon do have bones. They're in a group of fish called bony fish, and the science name for that is osteichthyes. Try saying that 20 times fast. So osteichthyes fish, their skeletons are made of mostly bone. Now Dakota was talking about fish that have cartilage, and fish that have cartilage are sharks and stingrays. Their skeletons are mostly made of cartilage, which is a different material than bone. It's a lot more flexible. Bone is really, really tough and structured. So there's a little bit more of a difference there with the different types of fish. So it's actually kind of a cool thing. In the Columbia River, we've got fish called sturgeon, and sturgeon are technically considered osteichthyes fish, so they're in the group of bony fish, but they're actually mostly cartilage, and so there's going to be a lot of variation. No, all fish are not the same, so some will have more bone, some will have more cartilage. So great question, Elsie. Another topic that comes up a lot, actually, and this question came from Aria. So they asked, what's the difference between male and female salmon? And this is a great question, because especially now when our fish are fry, so young fish and fish are, I should say salmon, young salmon and salmon out in the ocean are actually really hard to tell the difference between male and female. For fish that are out in the ocean, if we wanted to be able to decide if they were male or female, we would have to do what's called a dissection. We would have to look inside the body to see if they have male or female body parts on the inside. But when they get a little bit older, like they're ready to spawn, that's when we start being able to see the differences between male and female. So males are typically going to be, when they're really close to spawning, they'll be more colorful, their jaw shape and size, so the whole size of their head. Males typically look like they have longer faces, hooked jaws, compared to the size of their body. Female salmon will kind of keep a more proportional or sort of same size face to body ratio. So these are some differences that we'll see. And yeah, so the benefit for color is the most obvious one. Males will be brighter in color to attract the mates, and females will actually be less colorful, and this is actually good camouflage because they've got very precious eggs on the inside, and so having that camouflage, not being bright and flashy like the males, helps to keep those eggs really safe. So great question, Aria. The next group of questions is talking about what salmon eat. And so Elsie sent in a question asking, what do salmon eat when they're older and when they're babies? So young salmon in rivers will typically eat freshwater crustaceans. So this could be maybe tiny crayfish, sow bugs, or pill bugs, and let's see, and scuds. Scuds, they kind of look a little shrimpy. So in freshwater rivers, they'll eat some of those freshwater crustaceans. They'll also eat insects like mayfly and caddisfly and stonefly larvae. So when they're underneath the water, they're actually waiting to develop into the flying insects. And so when they're underwater like that, they're a great source of food for young salmon. Even if some of our salmon are real sneaky, they can catch bugs that maybe land on the water, like stoneflies and mayflies and caddisflies. When they get wings and leave the water, sometimes they'll still dance or sit on top of the water, and salmon can kind of come up and gulp those. Fast forward, let's go to now, what do adult salmon eat? So now adult salmon are out in the ocean and eating all sorts of stuff out there as well. They will still eat insects and krill and plankton, larval crustaceans, so baby crabs maybe, little floating crab larvae. They'll gobble those up. Sort of the best food that they can find when they're big are other what are called forage species fish. So these are smaller fish that are really high value for nutrition. So that will be what are called sand lances or anchovies or smelt. These are also a great food source for people as well. So these are tasty fish, high in nutrients, get them really big while they're out in the ocean so they get ready for their journey back to freshwater to spawn. So thanks, Elsie, for that question. Next, actually, Charlie asked, will the baby salmon eat algae inside the tank? And this is kind of a funny observation that I've made, is that sometimes some of the fish will be ready to eat quicker than the others. And so they'll start trying to eat things, maybe dust particles that land in the salmon tank, or maybe some floaties or little bits of actually algae. So I have actually observed baby salmon in the tank trying to eat chunks of algae if there are some. Typically out in rivers, like I was saying, they prefer more higher protein nutrient stuff like bugs and crustaceans. And so they may eat some algae in our tank. We might see them, especially in that live video, the live stream video. I saw it this morning. You could see them kind of gulping at things that float by. So there is a good chance that they're going to be doing that. So good question, Charlie. Great observation. And the last question comes from Alexander. And Alexander asked, what will our salmon eat that are in the tank? So I've talked about what they'll eat out in nature. And I talked a little bit about maybe them trying to eat floaty algae. But in our fish tank, our fish are actually going to end up eating a fish meal food. So this will come from the hatchery. This is similar to the food that you would feed your fish at home. This is sort of a blending of all different kinds of proteins and nutrient stuff that they need. So a lot of the fish meal that we're going to be feeding our salmon in the tank is made of actually algae in some cases. The algae does have a lot of great nutrients, and so for hatcheries, they're buying food that has some algae, some vegetable nutrients mixed in, and then a lot of it will be based with what's called fish meal. And so fish meal is a mix of the parts of fish that maybe humans don't eat, like fish heads and bones and stuff like that. So nothing is wasted when fish are caught from the ocean. The good meat will go for humans to eat, and then whatever's left over is used for different purposes. And so in this case, they would put some of that fish meal into what we're feeding our salmon. So they're getting all the food and nutrients that they would need from out in the wild in our fish tank. So great question, Alexander. Thank you. And well, thanks again. Thanks for joining for this 2-month anniversary edition of Salmon Science Friday. Keep the names coming, keep the questions coming, and I will see you next week. See you later, taters.